Good morning. I'm a little tired. I'm a little hungry. So I'm a little agitated. But I figured we could do the dishes together and kind of work through the struggles of trauma in a traumatizing world. One of the really cool things about dishes and cooking is that even though we have like specific ways to do things, there are very particular people who need things done the right way. I'm one of those people. The dishes for me have always been a source of severe anxiety, and like if it's not done right, then I get very anxious and upset. You could say it's a bit of OCD. It's also a bit of anxiety. When I was growing up, I was the only girl surrounded by a lot of guys, whether it was cousins or my brothers. And I often, instead of getting to play video games with them, or play with them, or hang out with them, I was helping my aunt with cleaning her house, or I was helping my grandmother with her house, or I was helping my mom with my grandmother. I just didn't get to be a kid. And so part of being an adult now is actually like letting myself do the stuff that I wanted to do as a kid. So play the video games I wanted to play, watch the shows I wanted to watch the movies I wanted to watch, sing as loudly as I want to because no one's going to be upset with me, go on walks when I want to. For instance, like I always wanted to do outdoor chores with my dad, but he only wanted the boys to do it because he wanted them to learn what it meant to be a man. The irony of me being a trans man is not lost upon me. Am I a trans man because I want my dad to finally love me? No. I'm pretty tired of my dad, honestly. I'd honestly be okay if I never saw him again. In fact, it gives me peace to imagine never having had a conversation with him again. Never having to care for his emotions or heal him in the ways that he refused to heal himself. But I always wanted to do things like go camping or go on nature walks or mow, work outside, cut down trees. And I do that now. I worked on ranches. I learned how to drive a tractor, not my dad's tractor. And even when I tried to learn how to drive his tractor, he made a big deal about it and ended up showing my trans girlfriend before me, which doesn't speak to him being pro-trans people because he said stuff like trans people are in suicide cults. And it was more that his sexism outbeat his bigotedness. And he didn't believe that I already knew how to drive a tractor. And even if I could drive a tractor, well, I could never drive his tractor. But my ex could. And both my mom and I wanted to learn, but it's just not what women do, right? We clean. We cook, which is partly why I chose not to learn how to cook when I was younger. When we had cooking classes in high school, I veered away from them. I refused to cook. And when I had a partner who cooked, I ended up putting a lot of that work on her because I didn't want to be brought down by this womanly thing when my entire life had been constant jokes from my brothers saying, you know, go make us a sandwich, or just a number of things my dad said that just made me go, huh? Even after I was sexually assaulted by my cousin, my dad was anti-abortion. And when I got upset about that, and my mom got upset about it, he didn't give two shits because we were just stupid women and we didn't know how bad abortion was. But he didn't know how bad sexual assault was. What's truly worse? Knowing that your nephew has been doing some disturbing things and deciding to give him an opportunity to assault your own child, or the hypothetical idea that your child might need an abortion one day. I personally think that a father who wouldn't protect his own child is not a good father. I think a mother who would not protect her own child is not a good mother. And it doesn't matter if they think they were, because it's not them who was affected in the long run. They might feel bad for what they did, but they are not suffering the consequences of their own actions. Not in the ways that I am. I did not cause my own CPTSD. I was an easy baby. My parents always talked about how I was so quiet and I never cried. So much that they literally took me to R-rated movies because they didn't have a babysitter. 30-year-olds who had plenty of money and a huge family chose to just take their baby to R-rated movies. And when my brother was born, he was just a table topper. That's all we were. We were just objects for their entertainment. I mean, my dad was a depressed 30-year-old who didn't have any hope that he would have happiness until he... There's a cat in my hibiscus. Sorry, there was a cat in the hibiscus. I mean, but like with all of this trauma, my dad was 30 years old and had plenty of money, but he couldn't seem to find a wife. And then his sister was, got her friend from elementary school to date her poor brother because she wanted a family. My aunt did. And my mother had no prospects and couldn't get away from her family home the way that I can't get away from my family home. And so my mom dated my dad for 2 months before they went out and bought a ring together. And they got married very, very quickly because my grandmother, my father's mother, who rescued him from an abusive father, she had cancer. And his dad had cancer. And so he wanted his parents at his wedding. My mom also wanted her parents at her wedding, but her dad was already dead. That's why I was given his initials. So it was 2 mothers who showed up. The grandfather I'm named after, my mom's grandfather, couldn't show up because he was dead. My other grandfather, the one who was an alcoholic, abusive man who scared his wife away when she had 3 children under the age of 5 to her father's house. Both grandmothers showed up. My grandfather chose not to. Because even though my dad said that he had forgiven my grandfather and that he, for everything he had done, for all the times he hadn't shown up, my grandfather decided that he wasn't either good enough to show up or he literally still didn't care. Because my father still wasn't important enough. And honestly, that's what I would say was more likely. Because men like that, they don't really change. He wasn't an alcoholic anymore, but alcohol was not the only thing that made him a bad person. Kind of like my dad. He was an alcoholic, and he smoked until I was born. And then he stopped. I was his only reason for stopping. And he told me all the time how I saved him, how we saved him, how my mother and I saved him, how my brothers and I saved him. But you know what children are supposed to do when they're children? They're supposed to trust that their parents will save them. They are supposed to feel safe around their parents because their parents are already safe people. They were not in desperate need to be fixed by a child. I wouldn't say that my mother was much better because she was dealing with severe depression and mental health issues that were pretty much hidden away, even though my brothers and I dealt with it. We experienced my mom having issues, but we just thought that's how moms were. And this is not me ragging on people with mental health having kids. It's when you choose to say you don't have an issue, even when it is affecting people. That's what I had issues with. And that's something everybody does in one way or another. In some capacity, we all hide something about ourselves that we don't like. We all choose to look away from something that causes us pain. Because who wants to sit and stew on stuff all the time? Unless you're an artist or, someone who does that all the time. I grew up hearing my father's traumatic childhood stories and traumatic young adolescent stories about him having to tell little children that their mom was dead when he didn't even know them. He just walked across a car accident. And I wonder to this day if the mom was actually dead or if he just severely traumatized those kids. But it goes back to when we are struggling with our own trauma. How on earth are we supposed to take care of a child? How on earth are we supposed to put aside all of our pain and just focus on that child? Especially when the longer you put away that pain, the worse it gets, the more rigid you become in your ways, and you might start doing things that maybe your parents did that you didn't like when you were a kid, but now you understand now that you're an adult. But maybe we aren't meant to understand and imitate what abusive people have done. We can say that person had issues and that they had things, that they had their own demons and they were struggling with stuff. But we can also say that they never should have hurt that child. They never should have hurt whoever they hurt. That just because you are traumatized does not mean that you have a right to just be a bad person. And that goes back, if I, was talking to my parents about this, they would say, well, your grandfather wasn't a bad person. He was just an alcoholic. Okay, well, what about after he was an alcoholic? After he stopped drinking? He still wasn't what his family needed. He still wasn't what his kids needed. To the point that their kids ended up picking up a lot of slack. Who is supposed to be responsible for these adults' emotions? Who is supposed to be responsible for making sure they don't boil over? Who is supposed to be responsible for these people? Do we hit a point where we just say, I can't clean that? There's nothing good about this. Do we just walk away? So many adult children of narcissists and traumatized adults, traumatized parents have walked away from those parents. And yet so many of those parents think that they are being abused by their child and they can't comprehend that maybe their child was abused by them. Because in their heads, they're the only ones who get hurt. But sometimes we're looking at the wrong thing. Sometimes we're trying to fix the wrong thing. We're trying to say that, well, the dishes are just dirty because they got out of my hands. Or the dishes are dirty because I try to lean on people and I leaned on the wrong people. But why would I lean on the wrong people? Why am I still so upset? Even though I turned off the heat, it's still too hot. It's too hot to touch. It's too hot to pick up. If I was trying to force this kettle to be cold because I just turned off the heat, well, so it should be fine, it should be better, everything should be fine. But that water's still going to be boiling. It's still steaming. Because even though it's not being flamed, heat up the way it was, it needs time to settle. I would not give this to a child. They will get burned.